and give you the information that we want to be spread as a result of the committee meeting that we had here a few days ago. Halifa.
Thank you very much. We are here to update the public on the issues discussed and the resolutions adopted by the Central Committee of the People's Democratic Organization for Independence and Socialism, Pdois. The Central Committee held its inaugural meeting after the 9th Congress elected the representatives. We chose to hold the meeting on the 24th of April 2021 so that it will have symbolic significance. There was vacuum in the nation. Nobody talked about 24th April 2021. And from the inception of Pdois, we emphasize that that is the national day. And any day that Pdois takes over the reign of this country, 24th April will be commemorated as the national day. Because, as the chair told the Central Committee in his opening remarks, 18 February was the beginning of the achievement of the right to self-determination and independence. The beginning. Because at that time, when your elected representatives pass a bill, it would have to be assented to by a representative of Her Majesty to become the law of the Gambia, because Her Majesty was the executive authority of the land. That lesson was drawn by this party and taught to the nation, and no other had done that. That the 1965 Constitution was a constitutional monarchy that did not help the country to attain its right to self-determination and independence. Pdois, therefore, held its first Central Committee meeting after the Congress to remind Gambians that on the 24th of April 1970, the Gambia became a sovereign republic. That sovereign republic made it possible for Pdois to hold a Congress and to hold a meeting of its Central Committee. Why? 24th April 1970 gave birth to the sovereign Gambia. And when we met, we observed the clarion call that Pdois is to restructure for system change and smart government in preparation for the final battle against ignorance and poverty. Ignorance, as far as we are concerned, must be contextualized. To be a sovereign republic, we have to have a sovereign people. And to be a sovereign people, we must acknowledge that power belongs to each sovereign citizen. Power belongs to each sovereign citizen, and collectively, we are the owners of power that determines our manner of government. That is a lesson that we want every Gambian to take note. That in you, power lies. And it must be discharged by entrusting that authority to your fellow citizen who is equal in power, irrespective of our ethno-linguistic origins, gender, and any other sectoral difference. And by virtue of that, we are still ignorant if we do not acknowledge that we are citizens of a republic where all of us are equal in sovereignty, and none of us should divide us on the basis of our religions, ethno-linguistic groups, or any other consideration. As long as we do not acknowledge that, we are still ignorant. And as long as we don't acknowledge that, Gambia will never be united, and as long as we don't acknowledge, Gambia will never develop. That is the foundation of this party. And that is the foundation we celebrated on the 24th of April, 2021. All members of the Central Committee were reminded that we held a Congress to prepare the ground for Pdois to achieve the aim for which it was established. First and foremost, to ensure that every sovereign Gambian realizes his or her authority to determine the existence of this land. And by that awareness, we move to the second stage. We are empowered to eradicate poverty so that we can live in prosperity. That was the clarion call we adopted and committed ourselves to implement until the last days of our life. The agenda of the Central Committee constituted 11 elements. The first element was to help the members of the Central Committee to understand the rule of law by referring them to the Pdois Constitution, how it progressed from the building of a Congress to the building of a Central Committee, and show them how responsibility is transferred from a body that meets every 2 years to a body that meets semi-annually. We will see how that progresses to the bureaus that meet every day to carry out the decisions of the Central Committee. It was clear to them that the Congress was the supreme organ of the party that follows the General Assembly of Members, which meet only if we wish to dissolve the party or change its principles. That therefore, this organ, which is the supreme organ, let's call it second highest supreme organ of the party, meets to elect representatives and to chart the basis of the internal and external policies of the party. Elect its representatives. Having done that, it passes on the baton to the Central Committee to look at the resolutions passed and work out the agenda for their implementation. The Central Committee, therefore, understood its responsibility that it needed to review what the Congress left undone and come up with resolutions in order to implement them. The first task was to prepare the Central Committee members for responsibility. It therefore introduced the signing of what we call the Solemn Declaration by CC and SADO CC members of office. The declaration reads, having been elected to the post, and you mentioned the post, according to the constitution of the party, do voluntarily affirm that I do subscribe to and undertake to uphold all those principles and code of conduct of the party, and will discharge my functions honestly and with utmost sincerity to ensure that I contribute my quota to the best of my ability in transforming the Gambia into a land of liberty, dignity, and prosperity for all, and free it from ignorance and poverty. I promise that I will never succumb to any undue influence and would not accept any gift or donation in kind or cash without the knowledge and authorization of the Central Committee and on its behalf. I solemnly declare that I will not subdue to privilege, patronage, or intimidation, and will instead ensure that I will never resign. I will resign from the party before going to support any other party in good faith. I pledge my honor as surety to ensure the realization of the Solemn Declaration. All the members of the Central Committee and the shadow members of the Central Committee had to read this Solemn Declaration, affirm their commitment to it, and sign the declaration, and it is now kept in the archives of the Central Committee for eternity. After signing the Solemn Declaration, a copy of which will be given to you so that you will be able to quote it exactly as it is in the text, we hope to begin the process of showing what accountable representation truly means. We move to the second agenda, where the Central Committee received a report from Dr. Adam Abba, the authority selected by the KM to preside over the 2021 Pdois Congress. Wherever we hold a Congress, the members within that region will select one person to preside over the Congress. And we receive a letter which indicates that there was a dispute on the status of two people. Ms. Aminata Korea and Mr. Kemeseng Sane. And in his letter, he indicated that he addressed a letter to them, and on the 10th of March, he received a letter from Ms. Aminata Korea, and on the 24th of March from Mr. Kemeseng Sane. He attached copies of the letters that were sent by the two persons. And for Ms. Aminata Korea, she indicated very clearly that she was an invitee and was elected without her own involvement, and it was not for her to accept or reject anything that was done in that Congress, but had already indicated that, having been informed of the rules of play, does acknowledge them and rescinded the position for which she was elected. She also affirmed that her commitment to continue to support the party. Mr. Kemeseng Jammeh indicated, Mr. Kemeseng Sane indicated very clearly that he was also there as part of the Pdois Media Committee, and therefore the rules of procedure having been explained to him, he also accepted willingly the actual decision that would follow the observations that was made. The members saw no controversy in the letters addressed to the two persons, saw no controversy in the responses, and therefore acknowledged the position of the authority presiding over the elections and adopted the position that was mentioned. And in that sense, the two positions became vacant and needed to be filled. The Central Committee, having considered these decisions made, moved further to deal with the filling of the vacant posts that existed. The Central Committee guided itself with its own constitutional provisions. Article 22 does state under paragraph D that the Central Committee appoints persons from within its ranks in the Central Committee as a result of death, infirmity, or resignation, provided that a majority of 2/3 of members selected by the Congress are not affected. The position of the Pdois Constitution is that you cannot import representation into the Central Committee. But if a position remains vacant, you can actually appoint someone within the Central Committee to oversee the particular position. But in this respect, the condition is in case of death, infirmity, or resignation. Since these cases were not about resignation, death, or infirmity, the Central Committee therefore resolved that the positions will be left vacant pending the next Congress. But prior to that, since the Central Committee has power to establish committees under it, ad hoc committee will be established to continue to run the affairs of the Bureau pending any constitutional amendment or election by the next Congress. The Central Committee went further to deal with the issue of the the resolutions that we pass at the Congress. We agreed that the resolutions at the Congress must be implemented by the Central Committee. And we did come up with resolutions to implement the resolutions of the Congress, and that will be indicated before we conclude. Two crucial items also came before the Central Committee. One was the restructuring of the party to prepare it for smart governance and for system change. The Congress did review the current structures of the party and came to the decision that the Central Committee will begin forthwith to build the structures at the regional level, to link those structures to the headquarters, so that all those structures begin to synergize to ensure effective administration and management of the affairs of the party. It also sees the need that in all the structures, all the bureaus will be represented. The women, the youth, the organizing, the political bureau, information bureau, bureau for foreign affairs. All these bureaus will be replicated, and the secretaries will coordinate with the regional bodies so that each bureau functions according to its mandate. The Central Committee further reviewed the issue of electoral campaign. Having selected the presidential candidate of the party, the members saw the need to establish an independent administrative and operational structure for the campaign that is just about to unfold. The Central Committee did review past experiences and saw the impact of those past experiences. It had participated in 2016 coalition building. We started on the 30th of October to select its candidate. From 30th October to 2nd December, the most significant change in Gambian history occurred. In 1 month and 2 days. What was responsible for it is because of this centralized mobilization of the people, rather than a bureaucratic centralization of a campaign structure. So now the bureaus have been charged to come together and establish for the party a decentralized campaign structure which will not be obstructed in any way in its movement and will not build any bureaucratic structure where anybody rules as a governor in order to facilitate campaigns, which we have seen in the past, which has stalled campaigns in the past because of the idiosyncrasies of leadership. The party sees the need to introduce a completely different campaign strategy and structure to challenge the next phase of the struggle for change. The Central Committee then proceeded to look at the funds that were utilized for the Congress and explain how they were utilized. All those who contributed to it will ultimately have, after the audited accounts, copies to see the decentralized administrative and operational structure that was established to hold the 9th Congress of the party. The members of the Central Committee were charged with different responsibilities of just oversight. And individuals outside the Central Committee took responsibility for food, for accommodation, for transportation, for media. All areas were handled by different individuals, and an accountability system established based on competence, where funds were authorized to be spent according to the budgets that were prepared. So this matching of expenditure and income based on what is prescribed by authorities outside of the Central Committee created a basis of accountability that the party will continue to consolidate, because everybody became involved in the process, and as a result, the result became what it was. So those who claim that Pdois is a centralized organ where a particular individual decides everything will now be disappointed by the facts on the ground. And the Central Committee members were well informed, and some of the lessons they were learning about the finances were not only new to them, but new to the Secretary General and the chair of the Central Committee. So in that regard, we are convinced that Pdois has built the architecture for a party of the future, a party owned by its members, a party owned by the people. We concluded the Central Committee meeting by adopting resolutions which ultimately will have to be vetted again by sending it to the members of the Central Committee after the clerical staff finishes with its editing, so that they will endorse. And once that is done, we will give it to each media house for publication as adopted. But what is important is to give you background information on some of the issues that we have finally raised for the members to bear in mind as we proceed to inform the media so that they can inform the nation on the resolutions. That the Central Committee will mobilize human, financial, and material resources to implement the resolutions of the Congress. Number two, it was also very clear that since certain individuals were deemed to have rescinded the positions that they took by virtue of the information they received from the authorizing authority, we also adopted that decision as part of our resolution. We move to look at the issue of the vacancies and adopted a resolution to ensure that we constitute the ad hoc committees to carry out those responsibilities. We've also seen the vacancy in terms of what we could do under Article 22 of our Constitution and a series of other articles. We therefore adopted the resolution for constitutional review. And there is no doubt that by Saturday, the bureaus will meet, the secretaries of the bureaus will meet to constitute a task force that would establish a constitutional review committee to review the constitution of the party and update it wherever it becomes necessary. We've also resolved that the Central Committee prepares the ground for the strengthening of all the bureaus regionally. So it means that the Youth Bureau, the Women's Bureau, all the bureaus will now have representation, a male and female, from all. You have 7 regions, we have 8 regions. We have CRR North and CRR South, as far as our party is concerned, and we have bureaus on both sides of the bank because of the isolation of the regions. So in that sense, all the bureaus will be replicated, male and female, in all the regions. The Central Committee also promised that it will prepare the ground for a new tactic in terms of mobilization in the presidential elections. The members concluded by looking at portions of the transformative agenda. Why? Because the party, by virtue of time, was unable to launch its transformative agenda on the 7th of March 2021. To launch the transformative agenda, it is agreed by the Central Committee that we will select another important day, but this day will be a day for Africa, because this party is a party that aims for the unification of the continent. It is a party that intends to maintain the heritage that Lumumba, that Nkrumah, that Cabral had bequeathed to us. That it is our duty to defend the sovereignty of the African continent and forever liberate our people from the sufferings they've been trapped for centuries, to a point that they are classified among the wretched of the earth. That this party will not allow that to continue as long as we exist on this earth. Day and night, we will make the commitment to fight that battle against ignorance and against poverty until we have a land of free persons and a land of prosperous human beings. That therefore, we intend to launch the manifesto on the 25th of May, African Liberation Day, where we'll mobilize all those who can, respecting everything that will save the health of the population, so that in all the languages, what Pdois intends to do will be clear to all. We did go into some of the elements and show what we intend to do in the villages, in the country, if we were to assume responsibility. And this is given to our members so that they can continue to propagate the ideas, so that we have one vision and one mission. Many of this will come. And if you allow me, if you wish, members of the press, to share it with you, I will do so. If you believe that this is enough, then I can summarize. And then we can hold another press conference afterwards to deal with some of the elements of the transformative agenda. It is left to you. And I will not force that on your throat, but I will just give you an appetizer. we told the Central Committee that the debt burden of this country is $77.4 billion, meaning that even the newly born child carries a debt burden of $38,000. A newly born Gambian child carries the burden of $38,000. How are we going to solve that problem? We are saying that we will create a cooperative bank out of the sovereign wealth of the land that will be able to purchase the fishing trawlers, that will plow our waters and ensure that we put more wealth in our coffers and earn more foreign exchange. We'll engage in import substitution. We have indicated very clearly that we spend $4 billion in terms of importation of rice, when we have all the land to be able to cultivate, lacking only the resources to be able to do that. When we have money in our coffers, which we can send back to the farming community and give them the fertilizer, the seeds, and farming implements they need, and produce abundant rice, and therefore leave $4 billion in our hands rather than leaving the country in terms of foreign exchange. That is what you call import substitution. We have emphasized the need to be able to do the processing of all those crops that we are producing. To give you maybe another appetizer, look at the tourism sector. Almost 300,000 tourists are capable of coming to the Gambia. They will say 280 something, but 3,000 tourists realistically could be mobilized to come to the Gambia. We are saying that we will have a program where each tourist, before you leave your land, will tell you about the poverty of our people. Those people who are going to go there to sell the country will not only be selling sand, beach, and sun. They will be selling humanity. They will be telling those people what they can add to our country that is of value. That at least if they spend even $100 or euro, that goes to our people. How? We will get our people to start making cloth, to start making pottery, to start making all those things that constitute our national heritage. And the cooperative bank will sponsor them to produce that in accordance with what is expected of the tourists that are coming, so that there will not be a vacuum in marketing their products. Everything will be tied and linked to the strategy of promoting tourism in the country. And if we do that, we have calculated 1.5 billion that will go into the hands of our people on an annual basis. Development is about knowledge. It's a science. It's not about imitation. It's about study. It's not ready-made. You have to look at all the potentials of a country and craft it on the basis of what is scientifically possible. Then you achieve your goal. Another appetizer. Somebody asks, how do we end corruption? I want to be an investor in the Gambia. How do we end corruption? We say, don't come to exploit, come to share. Establish a company and then allow the workers to buy shares. The money that Social Security is taking and put in Social Security, percentage of the worker's salary, Why could sums like that not be accumulated and invested in the company so that the workers will own more and more shares, 10%, 15%, 20%, and then when it comes to the dividend, at the end of each year, they will get dividend that will enhance their prosperity and eradicate their poverty. This is what Pdois is saying. This is what the transformative agenda is to bring to the Gambian people to eradicate their poverty. We can. We have all the resources. We have the knowledge. We have the capacity. But we have lacked the resolution to make the decision that will empower those people with the authority to be able to decide and manage our affairs. That has been the problem of Gambia. That has been the problem of Africa. So in that regard, the Central Committee left this room inspired that there is more information to be gathered, more knowledge to be sought, ignorance to be fought, policies to be established and implemented, and a society to be transformed, a system to be changed, a system to be changed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alifa. Now, I will open the floor for questions, and you introduce yourself and the media house you are representing. Any questions?
And those media houses who would wish the local languages will do so. Those who do not want to cover local languages, we will excuse you after you ask your questions.
Questions can be asked not only by journalists, by anybody who has a question to ask. Anybody, for that matter.
Your agenda sounds very pretty, but you have been in politics for 2 to 3 decades now, and you have been propagating your message to the government people, and still now they can't absorb your message. What do you think is responsible for that?
Well, thank you very much. I don't know how you came to that conclusion that they are not accepting the message. What I know is that I was a presidential candidate in 2016, and when I invited the presidential candidates, 5 of them, to Kairaba, so that we can build a coalition and allow one of us to be the candidate, I know that eventually people came. And now, after that, it came to a situation where we prepared the ground to select a candidate, and I believe that we did succeed in selecting a candidate. And I believe that we did campaign, and I am sure those who followed our campaign would hear my voice. And I believe that the type of campaign we thought was acceptable to the Gambian people was actually the type of campaign which occurred. And I remember the president then saying, and I don't want anybody to think that we are caricaturing him in any way, but that I have people around me and I'm not afraid about anything. And obviously, we were among those. And what we said appeared to have been very, very much agreeable to the Gambian population and very much understood by them. And I believe that that method of campaign has never happened in this country with any other party other than Pdois. A very peaceful campaign, message-driven campaign, insult-free campaign, anger-free campaign, until the end that we could mobilize the whole Gambian population, one Gambia, one nation, one people, and the whole country became inspired. That's how we won 2016. How can you separate Pdois from that? And say that your message is not being heard. Who made it possible to change the country in 2016? We achieve and you deprive us of our achievement. You don't want to see our achievement. You don't want to hear our achievement. That is the problem of the country. It's not that Pdois has not had impact, but people refuse to recognize the impact and give the impression that Pdois has not been having impact. But when they need something, they come to us so that they achieve it. Yet they say nobody listens to us. Obviously, there was an impasse in this country. They say people don't listen to us. They don't listen to us. I'm sure that people listen to us. I am sure that people have been listening to us. But after listening to us, until power is transferred, they don't want to hear us anymore. Nobody hears them. Nobody listens to them. That is a message of convenience, not a message of truth. That's my position, and you have your position. But we are convinced that time will prove that wrong. There is no single person in this country, 48% of them, who live on less than $75 a day, that those people are listening to us. They will want the poverty of the people to be put to an end. This party that is saying that you have to have 12 years of education, free education. This party that is saying if this government can have 845 million taken from national coffers to buy sugar, to buy rice, to buy oil, to give it to the poor, this party is saying that that government has the financial wherewithal to give free breakfast and free lunch to every Gambian child. And the parent would not need 845 million to get rice, a bag of rice and sugar. That's what we are saying. This is a party that intends to give free education and free breakfast and lunch to every Gambian child in school. This is a party that is saying that it will accompany the young people in this country rather than the failed promises of 56 years, that the promises will be fulfilled, where every young person that comes out of school will go into national service. And that national service you choose where you're going to get your training, and government at least will give you the food that you need and the allowance to buy what your essentials are, so that you prepare yourself for work. We'll prepare a nation, we'll build a nation. If you wish, you go to the security forces after being trained, and we'll transform our security forces into working forces, so that they will build the bridges, they will build the wharves, they will build the buildings, they will build the roads, so that we create a whole army of producers and workers. That's what we intend to do in this land. You say people will not listen to us. They will not listen to us. Time will tell. Time will tell.
Yes, that's two questions are here. Get it?
Yeah?
Yeah, if you come here, okay.
My name is Ibrahim. I work for King FM Radio. Honorable Shala, you did so. Yeah, my name is Ibrahim. I work for King FM Radio. You did talk about a staggering amount of the body on the country. When Pdois, commonly called Pdois, if you are elected into office, how did you plan to redirect that volume? That is my first question. And my second question, in your Solemn Declaration, you made emphasis on the issue of gift. Why is Pdois so much particular about gift? As in the Gambia, people give most of these gifts for the purpose of perhaps out of generosity or love. Why is the party so much concerned about gifts?
Well, number one, in terms of debts, you always have to deal with your debtors and creditors. If they owe you, you will deal with them. If you owe them, you deal with them. So in essence, we have to do that assessment and negotiate what you can get rid of through negotiation and what ought to be paid, and you schedule the payment. We are saying that we are going to engage in import substitution in order to ensure that we earn the foreign exchange to be able to feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, house ourselves, to be able to give prosperity to our nation. We know we can do that. The debts generally had been relied on for infrastructural development. So we will make sure that we handle that aspect by creating sovereign national wealth in order to invest in infrastructural development and take that only if it is necessary and if it can be paid. We are also going to ensure that through import substitution, we are providing the means to earn the foreign exchange that should have gone to other countries will remain in our homeland. And we believe that as we move for a period of 5 years, we should be able to be self-sufficient in all the vital needs of the country, and therefore our dependency will be reduced more and more, and we will have the might to be able to resist certain impositions that may come from anybody else. We believe that the world is opening up to smart governments, honest governments, and we believe that we will have many international partners who believe in honest and smart governments. Now, in terms of gifts, you are not putting the question that I can fully comprehend, because you are talking about gifts as citizens, as religious people, as communities, which is a part of our way of life. But I don't think you are talking about somebody who is given a position of responsibility, accepting gifts in order to discharge public service. I don't think that's what you mean. So if that is what you mean, well, obviously I think you know why we should be opposed to that people are rendering service to the population based on what should be done, because it's a duty to be performed, and you've already been given an income to render that service. Now we are saying that Pdois is a school of administration. So if we are preparing our people for future government, then we must begin to internalize those values that will ultimately be national values as far as running a government is concerned. That is the answer.
Okay. My name is Landin Sisa from Credential. I have two questions. The first one is, I attended the entire Congress of Pdois, from the caravan to the Congress day. I want to ask, how did the nomination of Kex and Amina Korea brings an oversight from that Pdois, because during the Congress, several people were nominated, but immediately were identified as not part of the delegates. So how come Aminata and Kex issue, become a controversy?
Well,
the second question is, many people term Pdois as one of the most transparent political parties in the country. It has come to the surprise of people that since the three months after the Congress, that's the time people know that Kex and Aminata were not part of the Central Committee due to the fact that they were not delegates at the Congress.
Well, thank you very much for your first question. The first question, the answer is simple. Pdois has a constitution, and when we hold a Congress, the first action of the Congress is the election of a Credential Committee. The Credential Committee would actually prepare the ground for the delegates. You will see that their duty is to examine the credentials of all the delegates. What we had done in the past is to prepare the list of the delegates, prepare their files. As you can see, this is a file from the Congress. We prepare their file with all the documents that are necessary and their badge, so that they will be properly identified and the region from which they hail. I must say that before even the delegates arrived at Kairaba, the enthusiastic supporters had already taken over all the seats. So even the delegates had a problem in finding seats. Since the chair has told you that membership education is an ongoing process, and because of coalition building, Pdois had not intensified its membership education to a level where every member knew exactly how congresses are held, why they are held, and how they are constituted. So we understand that. Many people felt that they were a part. They took ownership of the Congress. That's credit. But of course, there is a demerit that technically, structurally, procedurally, we had quite a lot of challenges to face. That is why you saw the delay. We were in there cracking our heads what to do. Some said, well, why don't we announce that people should do something? We said that will be a chaos. There will be some people who will say, I will not. And I think that will be a disaster. So clearly we saw that we were left with a problem, and let us just continue with it and see what happens at the end. And what happens at the end is that many people were there, they were enthusiastic, they owned, and felt that, well, they could be anything in the party. We appreciate that enthusiasm. We accept the shortcoming of lack of membership education, and we believe that the lesson that we have gathered is to intensify that membership education, and the Political Bureau, I'm sure, will swiftly begin that process of enlarging the process of membership education and ensuring that our constitution is produced for every member to be able to get a copy of it and know what is happening, and it will be translated, and we will also put it orally so that people will know what is what. I don't know whether I've answered your first element. So therefore we can say that that was a key problem in terms of people who participated in the whole electoral process. Number two, why did we wait until 24th April to adopt a resolution that we are now conveying to you? Well, that's the rule of law. We came from a Congress that elected a central committee. But the central committee also has regional representation. And they also would have to elect male and female from each region to be members of the Central Committee. All that is a process. If you come to the Secretary General, as some of you did, and ask me to make a pronouncement, what I told you is 24th April we'll be able to make a declaration. But smart journalists as you are, and others, you saw our chair, and simply posed questions. The chair knew what the facts were. Nobody felt that this was controversial. Who says that what I have said here is controversial? Nothing is controversial. So it was a feeling that this was not a controversial matter. But ultimately, those people involved that you have mentioned knew. We knew. The authority knew. So this was not secret to any of those involved. But the issue is that the time was not ripe for us to adopt what the authorizing officer has proposed so that it can be formally declared. I would say the constitution of the party is what created the gap, and we could only fill it by what we have done. So we believe that that's how government works. It's not that anything that happens you go and declare. You have to prepare the ground so that procedurally what you do will actually be done in the way that it should be done. And I'm sure today no one will leave this hall and feel that what we have announced is controversial in any way.
Okay, if there's no question, I have a follow-up question on that. Aminata, you said you people, the committee wrote to Aminata and text.
I didn't say a committee wrote.
Okay,
you are a journalist.
No, sorry.
I have said to you, the authority that presided over the elections indicated after the election that he received messages that these people were not delegates. But at the time, he was overwhelmed by the situation that he did not take into consideration because he did not know who to consult, and that was not the time to consult. He was presiding. Would you consult a person, a newly elected Secretary General, a newly elected chair? Who would he consult? He felt that he was in a dilemma. He did not know who to consult to make any confirmation. Therefore, he just left it to flow until after the Congress, then he will follow it up. So we can understand the sequence.
Okay, to that, Aminata on her Facebook page, she wrote that she was disappointed to know that to read from the newspaper that she is not part of the executive.
No. I think what is important for you to note is that she read from somewhere, I would assume, that started attacking her. Some said she defrauded. I don't know. That's how the impression she had. Whether it was somewhere, but the Secretary General received information from the authorizing person saying that some people had called him to say, well, they have seen somewhere a claim that somebody is this position, and those are positions that he had already investigated and he had taken a position. So what should happen? So he was advised that he should talk to those people directly. And the information that we received from him was that, yes, those people talked to them and said that they didn't put it there, others had put it there. So it became a whole situation. So as far as we are concerned, she has every right as a citizen to defend her integrity whenever she feels that that integrity is being attacked. And we are not offended in any way. She can say whatever she wants in defense of her integrity. But we believe that we did consult, and an understanding has been reached that for us it's a process, especially the issue of when to declare. That something that is written, should we not have put this in the public space? But I think, just as you understand it now, we could not do that because of the rule of law. We speak for the Central Committee and not for ourselves. And we had to have a Central Committee meeting to adopt a resolution before we can issue a statement.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
In the languages also. In the languages, if they have questions in languages.
Well, we'll continue with this.
Well, you know,
Let me ask one question.
you can ask in any language anyway.
No, Baba Silla again. 2021 is another question we are going to December 4. So is there any possibility for them from
Well, what we should take note of is what is essentially the nature of politics in any country. Parties can participate on their own accord. Coalitions can be built. So those are all possibilities in an electoral system. So no political party will ever dismiss that you will not stand alone or you will not build coalitions. But what we have said, and said it very clearly, is that Pdois has exhausted that trend of building coalition for regime change. That is history. Pdois will never ever again participate in any form of coalition just to change face. Pdois will always move towards system change, and we have already articulated that system change. If any party wants to join Pdois in that bandwagon for system change, they are welcome. If anybody, any individual is welcome, they are welcome. We are ready to build the largest united front for system change of all human beings. We are not waiting for parties, because parties are microcosm of the population. We are talking about the Gambian population. We are talking about a wave of the people, an alliance of the people. Parties can join in, but the key alliance is the alliance of the Gambian people against ignorance and poverty. And if you are members, why don't we just respect the quorum so that we will not implicate the journalists here as being very supportive.
Journalists are asking questions in English because they are going to write in English. They cannot write in their own languages. So, but you can ask questions in any language.
Conclude in English, then less than in local languages.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, so if you say if they have no question, then we close.
Well, if you don't have questions, there are people here maybe who will not have followed the intervention in English as they would. So I'll allow Halifa to speak in Wolof, and yeah, and you can do so in Mandinka.
Mbajaɓe lafita ñin meñe angale kango fo jang ni do lafita tala isita chairperson ya même fo mbe kumo commencé la na kangolt pour mol sa kalamuta même fote jang même fote jang wala mo ñenti ko Pdois la Central Committee wole benta tilimoang anin nani April Karo pour ka Congress hayna ka koma fele pour nga kunung long nga ñaato bayni même photo Congress o Central Committee siita pour ka yinka même mu kesoti je ka ta ka ke tamandir ñaati pour ka patio samba ñaati mune ya kendi bengo keta tilimuang amin na men keta wo lungo la sanji tan lulu anin kilin komanto
Please.
1970 24th April mu kulete me ya lonko sani mobu kafu ning lungo atammita mo majura mune ya kendi a dalilo jama makala doy ya jeko lungte lungol kono men kummayata ning lungot wala ya kendi Central Committee benta wo lungole pour mol ya long mune keta e to bring sita side be mo yele ay même bambande je wala mu ñenti ko bi manke lung kensangot bi mu lung kum malati wala mu 24th April ako tonya tili tang anin sey february karoto wala ka jura bari men kita wolungola amunta ko tamanserol mu membe mol parandi kan aboko ye mbiro sotoron ibe dala dum kan pour que pare pour que ñoboroke fang soto tamansero ako wola kita tili tang anin sey february kaw bari même mu toñati maral kamo membe kiri wo wato la banko ala executive mu Angleterre man solet ni na député si pour que loi dada yemen dada yalo loi ka folo hamole ni hamma kayto dada folo fo ayeta queen la representative membe Gambia pour wol ya signer janni avec le loi ti nyimbango yalo woto fan soto man sifo so wala kendi referendum keta fotili mo anin nani april karoto iko sani Gambia keta republic wala mu banko men ya lon ko man sa ya burkata je man sate soto la je potete woto mol membe wo banko ka wolbe maro kala nyaati wala e maral kango naati pour ka yitandi ko banku dingol le sembo soto pour ka yitandi jumale nyanta Gambia maral adum fanan député bungo wosi tamanserol ke mune même mu hammoti luwato na tambite je abe tala na president fam be yalon ko molle ya tombo pour aya signé janni abe kala luwati ni banko ka woto wolumul lemu lungoti me yalon ko gambi dingol janta jurala an ka bring doy wuluta abe nyinku mo bambande ka mune ya kendi bawo sajji tan lulu anen kilin komanto jong yajulo kuntuta molla sembo wala sound ke nyimbanko la maral kawo wala ya kendi sanjululu wote o kake ngamen tambindi ya kontibo ni lafita ya bondije wala man long num wala ya kendi doy ko katobe kela nga dum coalition kono kafunyo ya me ya non ko mba kendila fo karta woto molye nyaton ko bondi woto ka nyaton ko sindi woto pour kumo me ya lon ko abena maral kan woto wosi seneya ko karonin lol adum fanan 2016 ngamira wosi ne ata ko karonin lol wada hanika bi mo lafita ka mol filindi wo falingo akumayata de mo men ka foko falingo man nafaso do ala fita mo sino ni da wo falingo akumayata amon futa nyanta futa la dame an korosiro nyanta kala mun ya kende amon futa je bari pour ka foko amon kumaya wo falingo le kumayata khani 18 February 1965 bawo men kita 18 February 1965 amun to ko taman sirolem bari ni mu toñalete ko Gambia dingo ye sembo soto pour que ñatum ko syndicat bonde wo koytele taling te je ko woto wala ya kendi doy ko bawo wo sembo wole be Gambia dingol bulu an mo kilingte wo sembo tamandi nola wole kafo naati politiko kafo wole ya naati pour nga kambeng nga jibe be banko sambala ñaame bawo pati damma te banko sambanola falinola wole ya ken ko fo pati yol ye wuli yata ka mol fanan karandi pour mun kamma wole kafu ñoma pour sembo ye soto pour que banko fay woto ñing la bu politiko la do koti ka kafolo folo ya fahamulo soto yela banko kano yela banko ding ya suute yalon ko sembo bebul yalon ko ini mo bele kañam ite tara la doya kono ite sonna momo ye wuli santo ite tara duma isalon ko sembo mem babulu wo karta kisingo wole bebul woto ntol bele kañanta banko ding yana woto banko ding me yalon ko amon wo suute wo manke banko ding woto folo yata tara lay fambulu ya fambunya yalon ko ila banko ding ya ñongta an ini mo bele kañanta wo ñanta sabatila banko dingol bebulu isalon ko era wo banko ding ya amanke santati amanke sotati ite la tamu iba tankala ite sonna mo ya ta ibul woto 24th April ay wala ñininka wala ya kendi e chairman fo ngawo tanka sani ngalong ayeke na safiroti na hakkilo kono ay taraje nkana film woto congress tambita central committee sita munera kendi ku silole bala kafo fo ay siloso congress woka si sanji fulal na tambita oto do ko be kala nyaati ni congress sonta ko ñin la ñanta kala adum fanan sanji fula le abesila oto abe wo soni yandi la no nyaati wala ya kendi patio ala maral kangoto ay central committee fanan soto wo central committee ado ko mumenti e karworo kasi ko me yalon ko kambingo keta kong soto ala a nyanta wole tala pour ka tamandi ayeke ayeke na tamande nyati ayeke na tamande nyati woto bawo abe kele na tamande nyati wole ya kendi central committee sita ay congress wala ko be yinka pour kake tamande nyati bari central committee fanal na botala mune nyanta kala woto bureau sotota bureau men yalon ko wala musiranti yoti ka bring congress be kene ay même fo wala mu ka bring abe congress kono mo fula la tommandiro ila kunya a futata bari wotumo atelebe sirantiyal aman lafi kamo kotan jibe pour ka nyininka e bawo mo ba mutala ko wo babulan ni kan kulela so wolya kendi aya bula wo nya dorum e tombondoro yake bari wo kola asala kiskisuro ke ako kabrin tombondoro keta fo congress o janjat ay le tar safele wo mo fulole la pour kalon fo moliye même fo wo mu toñalete ban wa manke toñat ako ay jabiro soto wo man kumo soso wo sonto ko wo place o de buña place o mu e man tara ñini kan e man tara pour ka ku keje wala ku foje me yalon ko anin fondin se yaate tañola woto ay safiro ke ko woto dinu ye jabiro ke letarola an yemen fo wala mu toña killing adunta media committee kono a nata congress o kono wo dali local wo do fanan invitation di tala a nata congress o to wo invitation kono wala kendi central committee woto sonta ko woto wo place fulo so sañi mo bondinoje amunta ko mo mantara wo place on kono ñinin karo fanan keta pour ka jibe wo place o ni motije isi mo dundinoje ñaadi ka bring doyla maral kango jibe abunda mon anin fula waye men yitande wala tonya dunya mu wolati dol si ta jannin ibela taymo banna ila wato banna central committee kono dol si resign si bo dol si lanjur so woto mun ñanta kala pour ka je ko wo place o si tano wala kani wo bunda ko ni wo keta central committee ñanta mo jibe la kono isi même bulandi pour ay wo bunda mara fo congress o yeki bari kabirin wo bunda jibe ta femman taraje pour ka yitandi ni mo ku kote men keta so wala kendi central committee ko woto bawo wala mu toñati sañi an sembobe central committee bulu pour ay kafo londi pour que wo bundal tamande jandin congress o be kala central committee sonto ko abe kafole londi la pour que wo bundal tamande bari wo bunda ate mo tombonda ka dundije bawo sembo tabulu central committee fanan ye bunda jibele kumo me ya lonko tarongo me ya lonko congress ya tale ka bring congress be kala misali fe a foto jenu ko deputies be sotola bunda deputy be sotola je bari mo ma understand baake ya mi nun ko ni ko deputy be sotola je aboko wole be kala normalon kolti mol men yalon ko wolbe wo bundal marakande amanke woti na bansan congress molle ko fondinkel ñanta tarla patiola tamander ñaato ye karaje dulame ya lonko isi karandiro ke mararo ñanta kala ñaami so wole akendi ye central committee bulandi pour ay fondinkel tombong me ya lonko wol si tara wo sectrice kono pour kiyela do kol niking so keta woti bari kabirin central committee ye tommandiro ke dolbe je e hammeta menna amanke bawo do ko nyanta kala nyamen ima ke wonya dole do ko koten soto me yalon ko waya kendi imela do ko keno kabirin wo keta central committee ko naabe dunwo taala ay tommandiro ke mo mela duno samba abe ko central committee le make ku woto central committee ko sañi ka bo sañi abe men kala wole mu ay resolution samba congress wosi som pour ka tamande so isaje ko congress yela tombandiro ke ni yela tombandiro ke wobe kala molti men yalon ko ebe tarala mekindiro la wo position da bari e manke ko imu normalan kollete wo position kon so woto resolution jama men keta congress amunta ko central committee ya jibele pour que silo parendi aba tamande la ñaga e congress fanan amunta ko ku keteje men ya lon ko ku kumma ye president candidate o tombo e central committee men je wole mu ku fulale be parti la bulot killing bawo parti o meta coalition yala siranti yo ya fa nyami an wo coalition ya wala ya kendi parti do ko nasitale okay bawo ay parti do ko nasindi ni parti o lafita wulu la koteke ka balu koteke woto fo nga kuto kuto yandi fo nga la tamandi nya kuto kuto yandi fo la an nga la bulol kuto kuto yandi fo nga la balol kuto kuto yandi fo be nga kuto kuto ya sa munta ko wole mu central committee la mission oti sani pour ka jibe mbe patio kuta kuta yende nyaadi le pour ala bungtero si bamba ala solo si dum isaje ko motaji jano la kotake ala bulol fanan si fay a ñama motaji jano la kotake woto kamben tamen na wala mu sañi headquarters be bambanna birol be tarala je lungolu mol be tarala je ni tata je ibe ni ye ko soto ila fata men tamande la pati wala ko tarola ibe mo tarala je men yalon ko wobe bulande la silol woto bawo wala be kene ni mo la fita do ko kala pour patiye ibalo na inyata tala dame isaje ko isi bulande do ko be dame isi mo taraje so wo fanan même kambenta wala mu e bawo patiyobe bulo fayla regional fanan be headquarters soto la me yalon ko wo ku klingole be tarala je mol membe tarala headquarters wo bundal fanan be tarala regional to isi ke do ko nyote so baje lako musu kafu ke wo be su tombon yeke central committee la do ko nyote amunto ko nyingle mu tamande nyaati me yalon ko iba parandi kan e mol membe do ko la wo regional to ibe parandi kan so wol ye taraje ye karande amuntu ko wole musilode me yalon ko abe walan kan president candidate la karola moye men je wole mu 2016 kabiri mol kamben tili tang saba october karo lemu lumoti men yalon ko presidential candidate o tombon kabiri nga tombonta karu killing wala mu December karo tili fula amunta ko ko be bant banko fale woto karu killing tili fula kono amunta ko banko fale muna yano wala mu campagne manke campagne sifati me yalon ko ibe mo ken kala yake kube kunna so ku jama si janjal akata nyamen wala mu momo me yalon ko ayala do ko no nebulandi kula be wulita kela do ko ke nyola wala ya kendi fango kita aketa nyama woto patio fanan ye même fo wala mu birol nyaton kol be sila ka jibe ibe mu tamande nyala dadala ibe mu bundal dadal pour campagne yeke campagne wala bundal campagne wala tamadenya campagne wala mol nyimbe mu kulete me yalon ko abe jibe la birol ba jibe la ka soton woto kuma labon jannin kuma labon binan folo e congresso te kenola ni nafulo man filti woto nafulo sotota nyamin adomota nyamin wo be yitandila mol ya yitandile a yitatale kabrin a yitata a munto ko mol ye menje wala mu secteur general anin chairman fang e a munto ko ku jamaabe ko kono be yalon ko wol ma suute fang mune ya kendi bawo kabrin congress la wato sita patiyo ye programme le dada ay bunda londi transport la bunda domoro la bunda laadula la bunda kibar talal la bunda jama ka dundi mol bulu mem manke ntelti an wolle ya taman an wolle nata mo yaaje ko kol keta aketa nyaam woto nyingi men yitandi wole mu mol men ka foko doyde mo kli mo fula nyinu bakundo ko ku ni ma fu yalo ngobe akoyta central committee dungol la ko doy bu katama wo silo doy katama silo menna wala mu ala maraka ngomi yemen fo adum fanan ka mo be dundi ala marrota bawo banko nabe tala nyaato banko dungol be la nyanta dunna ala marrota an doy be wole nikin kan abe wole karandi kan abe wole tamandi kan woto kuma labamo wala mu nyinti ko ni bengo kota o janni bengo be kota fo ngalodu la ta central committee ye lodu la ta killing kumo me yalon fo tamandiri ñaalamu congress ye men fo central committee ko a parita men kela naafulo feŋol anin hadamadiŋol men ñanta wo tamandi la pour ay asi soto a parita pour que wo bee kambendi ka kafundi ñooma ka ke dokuraŋoti pour congress ye men londi asi tama a ñanta tama ñaami fula jaŋo a parita fanaŋ pour kuwo ku men ye a loŋ ko e luwa bundaamu na maral kaŋo kono men ñanta jiibee la a munta ko e dulol ñaatonkol fanaŋ koteke be siila ka jiibee mun kafu sifa lebeloo la pour keena maral kaŋo patiyo la maral kaŋo seyin kaŋ jiibee isa je ko sa kuta kuta yan janniŋ congress naala be futa a munta ko n sonta fanaŋ ko e baawo koleya sotota tombondiroo to congress o to e men wo dula mara aye men fo wo place fulo to central committee sonta ko wo place o moti tarale je adi abe kafo lola men ba tamande la folo fo congress o yana isa je ko patiyo la maral kango si kuto sa kuto kuto yan patiyo fanan i sonta ko bawo pareta pour que campagne o ki woto bureau fanan be sila kote ke ka jibe bundalu men ñanta lola campagne la karola isaje ko wo fanan asa londino amunto ko a labongo kuma labongo central committee bulu wala mu ka jibe e ni ko system ce ka tamande nya fal wo mu menti akum mayata nun pour central committee dingol ya kalamuta pour mun kamma ntolbe nga ko kilinje nga ko kilin fo nga tamanti so ibajala ko ntemol filindinola men kumata je wala mu mol ya kalamuta sani ko adum fanan press conference koten be kilila pour mol ya kalamuta bawo wato tata pour mol ya kalamuta kumo be man fotaje anin kumo men kumata kumo beti wala mu nyinti ko na congress oto patio hammeta menna pour ayeke falingoti tamade ñaato aman fono a ñaama wala yakendi central committee ko sañi mbe tili koten taala wala mu tili muwan anin lulu me karoto pour que katoki nga tamande ñaa yitandi jeeye doy la tamande ñaa naye banko ta abe men kela tili mon anin lulu abe fola kayraba hotel oto mol mabe ta nyame nga mabeje nga fonda kamol beto mo sa suteno asi koy mo bema mol salon doy parata men kela bari ka femol sunya doron ka mol ma koy yalon mune be fokan je e même fota wala mo nyinti ko ni la fita fohar ya bayla banko ay aran keso so ala aran keso ko do men ko dunje aketa kuti men ya lonko e jama buka kalamuta ala kenya be nyami doin kol ko cooperative bank nyanta lola ko do men be dunna je insi jambando di sene jorongol anin turol di sene lalla ye doko ke kabanko bondi ñing fo har yakon bawo ni ya jibe sañ ko do me yalon ko ka bondi jing banko kan kam mano sang banta dalasi million wuli kemenani dalasi million wuli kemenani sango sanga wo bondi pour ayeke mano songo ko wo si do ko no ñim banko kan dalasi million wuli kemenani wo be ya tar ñing mol bulu ñim banko kan wo be fo har ya bay dol ko ibe corruption bondi la ñaadi ko mo me ya lon ko e nata ñim banko kan e lafida ila nafulo dundi la je janning ibe nala ye nafulo dundi je ye mo libo doron ko do bondi ko sañi do ko laal iba katala ye hakko soto company ye fom bondi al wala joto karo kare ya kafundi ñoma pour ye percentage sa ye talasan company la nafulo so iba jela ko e ni sango banta e iba jela ko wala tafanan abe bola profito ay dum do ko landu ni wo keta jumale be korobla iba jela ko ila nafa beje e nga même bambandi fanan ko banko la aran keso men ka dum cooperative bank isi ñemuta ko won sa ka dunde na ba kono wole do ko ke e ñemuta ya lande na banko kam ya do ko ndije ya wafi bande iba jela ko bantaran ka kodol be dunna ñi banko kam misalo fanan dita tori sol men ka nañi banko kam watu do mo wuli kemesa mo wili kele saba hani ni ko tori janni banal na mol men yalon ko wolle be kela na nyaton kolti wo bundal to wolle be tala banta ka yitandi wolla ko iman tara Gambia wafi kan fu ka foko tilobe jang bankobe jang hani iba fol ko hadama dingol le be jang hadama dingol men yalon ko kenne malle be jang men yalon ko ite nyanta ku kela pour que bulandi yetara daha kono ikana tara fuhariya kono isi wolke ela terte so wota hani e $100 ni yakeje ni keta mo wuli keme saba amunto ko million dalasi million wuli kilin dalasi million keme lulu sango sang wobe dunna na banko di ngol nyaadi dol si kararoke dol si potrike dol si kuku be yalon ko isa kendino mol si men sanno e bajela ko janni wo tori solbe kala ko patati bambo wol mako la woli wo do ko ke bawo yalon ko abe sannale so ko pare be dunna wol koto ya do ko nde ye fam parani janni season be commencer doyin kol ko tonya banku sambo manke chaka moti londole amanke ko londobe bola santo ka jolon hani crossirole woto ko ko men yalon ko ima crossi ita sambanol ita kenol woto wala kendi ku jamaabe je men yalon ko e doy parata pour ka yitandi mo ya kalamuto ko misalo menti pour fondinkel ko fondinke nyim banko kan abe sanji tan anin dulu karamo kan nyim banko kan me yalon ko joti tarlaje wo sanka sukro san kadi dol la me yalon ko iko faarol mun ya kendi nte wo dundi la na karambu ngolto pour ye da sama kendo soto ye konton kendo soto doy ko wole nyanta kala ni yake ibe duno talala wulu laal bul fondi kelbe tariyala pour ka ta karambu ngolto banko be dokule doy ko fondi kel men jita ibe dunna national service 1 year me ya lon ko itele ba tombon na ibe dunna dan en banko le be do rendel so ibajel ko ni wo keta e wolbe karango kela wolbe tarala banko la do ko wol si dunno ami kono ni lafita ani dunta ami kono ini meccole be dunna je subajel ko ibe amil falinna bawo molbe je mem fahamuta ye karandi banko din ya yalela wo be la banko kanula e be la banko din wol kanula so ibajel ko wol ni dunta wo ami kono wolli si brijol dada isi wafol dada isi silol dada isi ko keno ni banko ka amunta ko woto ibe mol sotala ikabe fo workforce ibe mol sotala me yalon ko doko lalemu men si banko bela doko ke hani ni momom bu banta ke ka ke banko woto kuma jama wala be jam and member fola kayraba on the 25th of May 2021 me yalon ko asimol makoy ye fam parandi ko Gambia dingol ye sembo soto pour que Gambia samba Gambia dingol ye hakkilo soto pour que Gambia sam bari men kummayata kumoto wala mo mol sa kalamuta ko Gambia be Afrika le kono men ya kendi ngatili mo anin lulu me ta wala mo Afrika le nyante kala kilinti nga Afrika di ngol bondi batako sanji keme ñoo mol be na kan ka Afrika la nafulo libo kata na mol ye tarafo har yakko wo wato tambita wodo ni doy ya commencé banku jama be dundaje an kafo be kala Afrika banko ka be yalo ko asi Afrika samno wala yakende doy kolbe mai 25 takanne pour kaje ko na falingo amanke Gambia dam mala falingoti Afrika la falingoti dunia la falingo alnimba lamin yemen yininka wala mun constitution membe kering sanya fo wo constitution wala be continue la suma pare rek dina dugga ci suma laccere na do ci wala fo wala mu constitution ti me yalon ko wala be continue la constitution mu kuleti me yalon ko na sotota doron a sotota ate bola fo ye kuto dundije isa falingno bari silo bala pour ka fali fo ya publicité folo fo ya hamma kayto safe folo ya janjandi kibaroto karu saba sinya killing afula nyango amanyana doyala tilitan ni yake amunto ko isa nati defide bungoto wole ba yinkala ni ya tambindi asita president mo aya signé ay ke luwati bari bunda jobe je fo ay ke referendum mo bari yalom ye constitution be janjan num pour ka fo ko inyanta ko crossela mune be sela anot bari kabiri woketa inata defide bungoto pour ka wo tambindi yalom wo manta so amunto ko sañi constitution koto wala be jam constitution koto amantara keri woto ni ku manke ala fo wote woyeke wo constitution don lebe tam abe ten ñu ngi leen di gërëm ne wax ji yàgg na wane nag dafa am lu ko waral ne doy dafa gis ni waxtu wi jot na pour mu beesalaat boppam parel boppam pour wecceeku bi nga xam ne du nekk wecceeku xaar kanam dina nekk wecceeku doxalin ne wecceeku doxalin boobu mooy li manqué ci réew te loolu lañ war a isi ñu ne moo tax gannaaw doy bu mu amee jotaay bu mag bi mu am ci Kayraba mu nekk jotaayi congrès ba doy ci boppam ñëwaat na ne dañ war a seet lañ d'accord ca Kayraba naka la ñoo fexee ñu doxal ko ndax mu jëriñ par loolu nag baax na nit ñi xam lu tax loolu di am ndax suñ ne parti mooy ne mbooloo la mbooloo nag dafa am charte ñu ne charte parti bi dafa taxawal ñi nga xam ne ñooy am kàddu yi ñu ne kàddu bi nga xam ni moom la ñu dugal ci mbir mi mooy kàddu pour taxawal congrès boo xam ne ñaari at yu nekk dinañ nekk li nga xam ne mooy mun a isi tëralin ci parti bi naka la war a doxee pour mu nekk njëriñu réew ñu ne nag gannaaw bu congrès bi amee ñoo nañ ba toll foo xam ne dinañ ëlbatiwaat doxalin naka la ñoo ëlbatiwaatee doxalin mooy ne congrès bi su fekkee ne isi la tëralin te congrès ba jeexal na ci ñaari at naka ngaa fexeeti ba nga xam ne li congrès bi doxal di nga ko mun a doxal ca réew ma